بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تبع هداه أما بعد. In today's session we look at one of the lines that have been mentioned by Imam Al-Jazari rahimahullah ta'ala. Previously we looked at the ahkam or some of the rulings related to lam, and those rulings were connected to a line that Imam Al-Jazari he mentions in the beginning of Babul Lamat. And as we mentioned, Ikhwan, these chapter headings were not placed down by Imam Al-Jazari himself, as Shaykhana Shaykh Ubaidullah Al-Afghani has mentioned, rahimahullah ta'ala, but they were laid down later. And so even though this chapter is referred to as Babul Lam or Babul Lamat, then in essence the first line deals with and discusses lam, while the rest of the lines look at other related affairs. He mentions here وَفَخِّمِ اللَّامَ مِنْ اسْمِ اللَّهِ عَنْ فَتْحٍ أَوْ ضَمٍّ كَعَبْدُ اللَّهِ. The first line he mentions, فَخِّمِ اللَّامِ, make tafkhim of the lam, that is, when you're reciting lam, make tafkhim of it, min ismillahi, if you're reciting the name of Allah, an fathin aw dammin, that is, you're reciting the name of Allah after fatha or damma, as we mentioned previously. Ka'abdullahi, ka'abdullahi, like Abdullah. And so he mentioned the general principle that we discussed, which was that the name of Allah Azza wa Jal, if it is preceded by fatha or dhamma, then it is recited with tafkhim, Abdullahi. And if it is preceded by a kasrah, then it is recited with tarqiq, Fillahi. Now, we looked at the varying types of lam as-sakina and the scenarios wherein lam occurs with a sukoon upon it and how it is to be recited. And we looked at a topic that we're going to go into more detail concerning, and that is the affair of al-idgham and idhar. And we said that idhar is that a person recites the letters clearly, while idgham is that a person recites the letters merging or after merging the two letters together. So when the letters come together, then one overpowers the other. And the origin is, when these two letters come together, the first one has sukoon upon it, the second has a haraka, has a fatha, kasra or dhamma. The second overpowers the one with the sukoon in certain circumstances. And so idgham looks at two letters coming together and then merging on the basis of the presence of certain circumstances. And so generally, ikhwan, idgham is that something assimilates something else, that it enters upon it, that it merges with it. That is the general meaning of al-idgham. But we have types of idgham, there are categories related to idgham, and so we're going to look at something of an overview of that, and then we're going to get back to the lines of Al-Imam Al-Jazari and just look at the relation between what it is that Imam Al-Jazari mentions and what is connected to this topic of Al-Idgham. So idgham in and of itself, as we mentioned, ikhwan, is a relation, or discusses the affair of two letters coming together, and that which is connected to the ruling of those two letters coming together, and of course that is as it relates to how they are to be recited. And so there are different elements to our study of idgham that we'll look at. Initially, when we're looking at these two letters coming together, we should understand firstly that as it relates to the types of idgham, the broad categories of idgham, then they return back to two main broad categories: idghamun saghir and idghamun kabir. The reason we mention idghamun saghir first is because that is far more common than idgham al-kabir. In fact, there are no instances of idgham al-kabir in Hafs and Asim, in the riwayah or the recitation of Hafs and Asim, the mode of recitation that we're familiar with at all, though it does occur in some riwayat. What is this idgham kabir and idgham saghir? Idgham al-kabir is that two letters with haraka. Pay attention, ikhwan. Two letters with haraka. So both letters have fatha, kasra or dhamma upon them. That the two of these letters come together, and as we mentioned yesterday, due to a resemblance that they have, due to some nearness that they have, and we'll look at what is intended by way of this resemblance or this nearness. And so idgham al-kabir is that two letters come together. Both of them have haraka upon them. Both of them have fatha, kasra or dhamma upon them. And they come together because of the fact that there is some form of resemblance and there is some nearness between them. We've mentioned that generally we're going to look at what we mean by this resemblance. The second type of idgham, this idgham al-saghir, is that two letters come together. The first of them is sakin. Yani, the first harf is a harf that has sukoon upon it, and the second harf is a harf or is a letter that has a haraka upon it. So the first has sukoon, the second has a haraka, fatha, kasra, and dhamma. This is what is known as al-idgham al-saghir. If these two letters have this nearness and resemblance, then we have the merging of these two letters based upon this principle, and that is al-idgham al-saghir. And the majority of idgham, the bulk of idgham, and our discussion around idgham is for the most part going to revolve around idgham al-saghir, since idgham al-kabir only occurs in certain qira'at and certain modes of recitation, like قراءة السوسي مثلا, يعني عن أبي عمر, that there are some instances of الإدغام الكبير in قراءة السوسي, يعني in the mode of recitation known as السوسي. For example, the coming together of two kaf, يعني two kaf that have haraka upon them, in the like of the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal in Surah Mudaththir. In Riwayat Hafs, we would recite ما سلككم في سقر, ما سلككم في سقر. But in Susi, ما سلككم في سقر. As far as مثلا Fatiha, then they likewise, we have with Riwayat and Qira'at Susi, we have a merging of two letters, the meme of Rahim and the meme of Malik, coming together in their riwayah, in the recitation of Fatiha. So they will recite Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahmanir Rahim, Maliki Yawmiddin, Ar-Rahmanir Rahim, Maliki Yawmiddin. And so instead of Ar-Rahmanir Rahim, Malik Yawmiddin, they have no mad upon the meme, but they recite the two letters merged together. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim, Malik Yawmiddin. And so this is an example of idgham al-kabir, as was the case with the previous ayah. ما سلككم في سقر, ما سلككم في سقر. This ما سلككم في سقر is two letters having haraka upon them coming together. And Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, Malik Yawmiddin, Riwayat Susi, then we have these two letters. That is in the riwayat that we're not as familiar with as it relates to the Quran, yani as we know it, and its recitation as we know it, which is popularly here in the West and in many of the Islamic countries, riwayat to Hafsin and Asim. Riwayat to Hafsin and Asim. And we'll make a mention, ikhwan, once we've come to the end of, or towards the end of the discussion of the ahkam, what is intended by these riwayat, and what is intended by these qira'at and modes of recitation as we know them in our time. Ala kulli hal, there are two then categories of idgham as it relates to two letters coming together. One of them being the two letters being similar and with them both having haraka. That is what is known as idgham al-kabir. But if the first one has sukoon and the second one has haraka, then it is known as al-idgham al-saghir. And that is, as we mentioned, the majority of our discussion around idgham is going to revolve around this category of idgham, al-idgham al-saghir. That is, the idgham or the coming together of two letters, one of them, the first of them having sukoon, the second of them having a haraka upon it. There is another issue related to idgham, and that is idgham has categories, and these categories return back to the types of letters that we're looking at. Of course, we're looking at pairs of letters, and so when we're speaking about the pairing of these letters, the people of knowledge categorize idgham into four categories in actuality. Three of them are categories that we may recite with, and in some instances have to recite with, while one of them is impermissible. And so it is mentioned just to be aware of it, but it is not something that we will discuss how it is to be done, because it isn't to be done. So in terms then of the categories of idgham, then idgham is categorized into three main categories in relation to what is permissible. In relation to what is recitable. And from those three categories, two are compulsory, one is permissible. And then we have that which is related to a category that is impermissible, and that is the fourth category that we look at. And so just to mention the names of these four, first and foremost, the first of them, idgham al-mutamathilain. Idgham al-mutamathilain. And that is the idgham of two letters that are the same. The second of them, idgham al-mutajanisain. Idgham al-mutajanisain. And idgham al-mutajanisain is the reference to the coming together or the idgham of two letters that are referred to as mutajanisain, and that is because of the fact that they are close and they are resemblant. Here, mutamathilain is a reference to being exactly the same. Mutamathil يعني هذا مثل هذا, يعني هو مثله. It is like it and the same as it in actuality. And that is as it relates to mutamathilain. But when we're looking at mutajanisain, then there is a difference in relation to its definition. Idgham al-mutajanisain refers to two letters that have the same makhraj, but the letters have different sifat. That is, two letters that have the same makhraj, but different sifat ordinarily, even though they may share in some sifat. But the main thing that we're looking at here is that these two letters are not the exact same letters, but they have and share the same makhraj. That is the main thing to look at. So it is not the same letter, but they share the same makhraj. Like, for example, ta and dal. Ta and dal, they share the same makhraj, though they're not the same letter. And so they are mutajanisain, yani they are of the same jins, or the same type of letter. And what is intended by this type is that they come from the same place, from the same makhraj. And now we can see, ikhwan, as we're moving into some of these branches of Tajweed, we see the importance of being and having some tamakkun in relation to the makharij and the sifat. And the more we progress, we're going to see it is important, ikhwan, to at least be firm upon our makharij and our sifat. The better we know them, the easier the rest of Tajweed is going to become. If our knowledge of them is scanty and we haven't really put them to memory, then you're going to see, as the science progresses and our study of the science progresses, that we're going to constantly be having to return back to where those makharij are, number one, and number two, that if someone is delivering about Tajweed and the dars mathalan is on the fly, we happen to catch a dars, and it is an alim min ulama al-qira'ah, and as he's speaking, he's mentioning these terms, and his terms for the most part return back to makharij and sifat, and we're lost because he's speaking about hams and jahr and itbaq, and he's speaking about the certain areas and the manner in which this letter is mutaqarib, and these letters are mutamathil and ma ila dhalik. These terms, if we're not familiar with them, we're going to be lost. If we are familiar with them, we will receive so much benefit. And so they're simple terms, ikhwan, simple phrases as it occurs with the word combinations that we're to memorize. Just put them to memory. And you spend 5 or 10 minutes, go over them, repeat them till you've memorized them. So in relation then to idgham al-mutamathilain, this mutamathil from mithil, referring to something being the same as something else. As in, you'll be familiar with the ayah, or should be familiar with the ayah, Ahl Sunnah, laysa kamithlihi shay. There is nothing like unto him, nothing the same as Allah Azza wa Jal. Here, this mutamathilain, 2 letters that are the same. And so we're speaking about ha and ha, dal and dal, and so on. Mutajanisain, 2 letters that are of the same jins, are of the same type. What is meant by this jins? That they come from the same makhraj. They come from the same makhraj. The third is al-mutaqaribain, or al-idgham al-mutaqaribain, or al-mutaqariban. The third category is the idgham and the coming together of 2 letters that are qareeb. That is, the makhraj, and in some cases the sifat, are qareeb. They are near and close. Or it may well be that they are close in makhraj, but not the sifa. We have, in terms of at-taqarub, it could either be that they are close in makhraj and sifa, like tha and ta, mathalan. Or that they are close in makhraj, but not the sifat, like dal and sin. Dal and sin, the makhraj is close, but the sifat differ. This has safir, that one doesn't, and so on. Or that they are close in sifa and not in makhraj, like hamza and ta. They share similar sifat, but the makhraj is there. They are nowhere near each other. And then the third of them, ikhwan, as we mentioned, is idgham al-mutaba'idain. That is the idgham of 2 letters that are completely ba'id one from another. That is, in relation to the makhraj and the sifat, they are ba'id. They are apart in terms of both of those things, like ha and mim. Ha is from the throat, mim is from the lips, and they are ba'id, and distant one from another. And if you consider the masafa, or the distance between the front of the mouth and the lips, and in the back of the throat, they are a distance apart. And it's one of the beauties, ikhwan, of the Lugha al-Arabiya, that we have this dissection of the letters, of the huruf, coupling them, bringing them together, and then there are elements related to what happens when they come together. If one of them has sukoon, one of them has a haraka. Yani this intricacy, I don't know of it being present in any other language, and Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. So these three, or the four categories, of course, what we're going to be looking at is al-mutamathilain, al-mutajanisain, al-mutaqaribain. As far as al-mutabaidain, the last of them, which is when they are distant, then the Arab would not merge those letters together. They would not bring together two letters that are ba'id and are distant in terms of the places of their origin and their sifat. So, since we have mentioned letters that are of a similar makhraj, letters that have similar sifat and what have you, then what we're going to look at here is this nearness and closeness in relation to the makharij. As far as the first category, al-mutamathilain, then of course, ikhwan, we don't need to look into that. The two letters are exactly the same. But we'll look firstly at the letters of al-mutajanisain, يعني the idgham al-mutajanisain. What are the letters in terms of them being close or coming from a similar makhraj? We'll categorize these letters, ikhwan, into 9 categories. Of course, these categories are in relation to letters that are from a similar makhraj, that are from the same makhraj, And so the first then is hamza and ha. Hamza and ha. And this in essence is a recap of much of what we've previously discussed around makharij and what have you. Hamza and ha. They are from the same makhraj. The second category, ha and ayn, from the same makhraj. The third, kha and ghayn. Kha and ghayn. Kha and ghayn. The fourth, jim, sheen, and ya. And this is not the ya of elongation, but the letter ya. The fifth, ta, dal, and ta. Ta, dal, and ta. That is number 5. The sixth, tha, dhal, and dha. Tha, dhal, and dha. The seventh, zay, sin, and sad. Zay, sin, and sad. The 8th, ba, mim, and waw. Ba, mim, and waw. And number 9 are the huruf of mad, the letters of elongation, alif, waw, and ya. And so the waw in category 8 is the letter waw, while the waw here in category 9 is the waw of elongation that is added to a word and is not recited independently, as is the ya and waw that we've mentioned in the other categories. So that is as it relates to at-tajanus and them being mutajanisain, them having or coming from the same or being of the same type, from the same makhraj. If you've written this down in a list, ikhwan, look at the list, absorb the list, because you're going to need to be familiar with it when we start looking at each of these categories. As far as al-idgham al-mutaqaribain, idgham of those letters that are close, idgham of those letters that are close, and that is two letters that have makharij that are near to each other. And so we're not looking here at the same makhraj, but we're looking at makharij or places of origin that are near to each other. So these letters enter into our study of idgham al-mutaqariban. The first category then, and this is 7 categories. The first is qaf and kaf. Qaf and kaf. You remember we discussed qaf being from aqsa al-halq, from the back of the throat, and then that kaf is in front of it slightly. And so qaf and kaf do not share a makhraj, but they are of a similar makhraj. Number 2, ayn and ha. Ayn and ha. Ayn and ha. Qaf and kaf, when I mentioned throat, that is the back of the tongue. Back of the tongue. Qaf is right at the back of the tongue, while kaf is in front of it. With the ayn and ha, then we're speaking here of the throat. Ayn and ha are not of the exact same makhraj, but the makharij are close. The makharij are close. Another category, or the third category, ha and kha. Ha and kha. Again, it is not the same makhraj, but the makharij are close. With ha, we said that ha is from wastul halq, is from the middle of the throat. While kha, we discussed, do you remember, ikhwan? That we said that kha is from adna al-halq, yani from the region of the back of the uppermost part of the halq or the throat. The fourth category, ta and dha. Ta and dha. Ta and dha, the makhraj is close, but it is not the exact same place. Dha, ta, you remember, you bring the tip of the tongue up to the area of the roots of one's front central incisors, ta. Whereas dha, the tongue and the tip of the tongue comes down slightly and meets the tips or the edges of the incisors themselves. Dha. Dha. And so the place of origin is near, but not the exact same place. Number 5, tha and ta. Tha and ta. Similar, ikhwan, to our discussion of ta and dha. Ta, the tip of the tongue meets or comes up to the upper incisors, while tha, the edges of the tongue, or the edges of the incisors, the tongue meets the edges of the incisors. Tha. So they are close, though not the exact same place. Ra and lam. Number 6. With ra and lam, again, we looked at the makhraj of ra and the makhraj of lam, and that we said that lam is uttered by bringing the tongue or the tip of the tongue up to the area of the gum that is at the root of the incisors. With ra, although with lam the tongue doesn't meet the root of the incisors, it is back slightly. With the ra, it is a similar area, except that we bring more of the tip of the tongue and the top of the tongue up to meet the roof of the mouth. And then we have, as we mentioned, something of an opening to avoid the repetition and the repeated ra'at, or this rolling of the tongue. And 7, fa and mim. 7, fa and mim. That fa and mim, they are of a similar, they come from a similar place, but not the same place. Fa is recited, as we mentioned when we looked at the makharij, by bringing the upper incisors down to the inside of the lip, the lower lip. Fa. While mim is recited by bringing the lips together. Mim. And so the lips are involved in the recitation of these two letters, but the makhraj is not exactly the same, but near. So with that being said then, if we're able to understand at least the concept of idgham, and the fact that what we're generally looking at is the coming together of two letters, one of them having sukoon, the other of them having a haraka, and we're looking either at idgham al-mutamathilain, yani the coming together of two letters exactly the same, or idgham al-mutajanisain, two letters of the same type, yani coming from the same makhraj, or idgham al-mutaqaribain, that is, two letters coming from makharij that are close but are not exactly the same. If that is understood, ikhwan, then we'll round up for today's session. Understand this foundation, because we're going to build upon it tomorrow, inshaAllah. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak ala nabiyyina Muhammad. Wa akhir da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.